Allen County Sheriff's Office is investigating an alleged doxing of a judge in the deadly Frisco stabbing case. There's been a lot of racial tension on social media since the murder of Austin Metcalf. The 17-year-old suspect, Karmelo Anthony, was released on house arrest with a reduced bond.
When you first hear the headline, it almost sounds too chaotic to be real. Kyle Rittenhouse, a name already tied to one of the most polarizing self-defense cases in recent memory, is now launching legal action against the spokesman for Killer Karmelo Anthony. And when you look closer, the situation reveals a deeper, more uncomfortable truth about the way narratives are weaponized in today's world. You can't help but ask yourself, how often are you being fed a version of the truth that serves someone else's agenda rather than the facts themselves? According to early reports, Kyle Rittenhouse is suing over what he claims are blatant lies, accusations that twisted the details of his self-defense case to somehow justify the violent actions tied to Karmelo Anthony. In a world already divided along emotional lines, it's a move that throws gasoline onto an already raging fire. But if you're honest with yourself, you know this isn't just about one lawsuit. It's about something much bigger: the battle for ownership over truth itself. When tragedies happen, there's always a rush to control the narrative, to shape public opinion, to weaponize half-truths and emotional appeals to protect reputations or destroy them. You start to wonder, how many times have you been manipulated by a carefully crafted story before all the facts came out? How often do you choose a side, not because you know the full truth, but because you want to believe it? In the case of Kyle Rittenhouse versus Karmelo Anthony's camp, you're being forced to confront an ugly possibility. Sometimes the people speaking the loudest aren't fighting for justice. They're fighting to protect their own interests, no matter who gets misled along the way. And if you don't question what you're being told, whose truth are you really defending? As you dig deeper, the stakes become even clearer and far more unsettling. Kyle Rittenhouse isn't just filing a lawsuit over some careless comment. He's accusing Karmelo Anthony's spokesman of deliberately twisting facts in a way that could permanently damage his name, his future, and everything he fought to defend. You start to realize this isn't just about two individuals caught in controversy. It's about the way reputations can be weaponized in a matter of seconds. How one lie, one misrepresentation, can undo everything you thought was already decided. You have to ask yourself, how fragile is the truth when public opinion can be so easily manipulated? How often are lives destroyed, not because of what actually happened, but because of what people want to believe happened? In Kyle's case, self-defense wasn't just a courtroom battle. It was a fight for survival in the court of public opinion. And now, seeing it twisted again to defend someone else's violent actions, you can imagine how that must feel. Like watching a wound you fought to heal get ripped open all over again. But it also forces a more uncomfortable reflection back onto you. When you hear about these public cases, do you demand evidence before forming an opinion? Or do you let emotions guide your judgment, picking sides before the facts ever have a chance to settle? You realize that the fight Kyle Rittenhouse is taking on now isn't just about clearing his own name. It's about setting a line in the sand, a warning shot that says you can't just weaponize someone's truth whenever it's convenient for your narrative. And whether you agree with him or not, the question still echoes in your mind. If lies can destroy someone else today, what's to stop them from destroying you tomorrow? By now, you've seen it happen too many times. A story hits the internet, twisted, emotional, incomplete, and suddenly the entire world feels entitled to judge. You might not even realize how quickly you become part of the cycle. You share it, you comment on it, you form opinions based on a clip, a headline, or someone's emotional outburst before you ever stop to ask, is this even true? That's the real danger in what Kyle Rittenhouse is fighting against now. Because it wasn't just the spokesman's words, it was how fast those words traveled, how many people believed them, how easily they were injected into the Karmelo Anthony controversy as if they were gospel. You start to understand that this lawsuit isn't just about clearing Kyle's name. It's about pushing back against a system where misinformation spreads faster than facts and emotion carries more weight than evidence. You have to ask yourself, how many times have you passed judgment on someone based on hearsay? How many reputations have been ruined not because of what someone did, but because of what someone said they did? We live in an age where going viral is more powerful than going to court, where public opinion has the power to convict someone long before a jury ever gets the chance. And in that world, all it takes is one person, one voice with a platform, to reframe your story in a way that makes you the villain, even if you're not. So when Kyle takes legal action, he's not just protecting himself, he's challenging that system, forcing people to take accountability for the narratives they push. And it leaves you with one critical question. When the next lie spreads, will you be part of the noise or part of the truth? At some point, you have to draw a line. Because when someone takes a human tragedy and tries to wrap it in someone else's story for sympathy or defense, you start to wonder what their real intention is. That's exactly where things cross the line with Karmelo Anthony's spokesman. When you first heard the comparison, maybe it made you pause. Invoking the Kyle Rittenhouse case, a situation that was legally dissected, debated across the nation, and ultimately ruled in Kyle's favor, to justify what happened with Karmelo, it felt off. Like someone was trying to borrow credibility from a completely different narrative and weaponize it to soften the blow of a stabbing that left a young man dead. And if you were Kyle, how would you feel, knowing that your name, your case, your trauma was being twisted and repackaged to shield someone else from responsibility? You start to ask yourself, when people defend the indefensible, how far will they go to hijack someone else's truth? And who gets to decide when that comparison becomes more than just misleading, when it becomes defamation? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't just throw around high-profile cases to justify actions that don't line up. You can't cherry-pick the concept of self-defense and apply it wherever it's convenient. In Kyle's case, a jury made a decision after months of testimony, footage, and cross-examination. But Karmelo's team? They tried to skip that process. They tried to fast-track public sympathy by dragging Kyle's story into a case that, by all early evidence, doesn't align. And that's where you start to feel it. The anger. Not because you've taken a side, but because you see how quickly facts get bent when someone's reputation is on the line. So now you have to ask yourself, if your name was misused in a moment of tragedy, would you stay silent? Or would you fight back too? By now, you realize this lawsuit is about more than 2 names on a court document. It's a warning! A signal to every public figure, influencer, and spokesperson who thinks they can twist a real case into a tool for public manipulation without consequence. You start to see it clearly. This is about accountability. Because when someone uses a national tragedy to shield another from scrutiny, when they drag a person's legal battle into the spotlight just to shift attention, they're not just playing with public perception. They're playing with lives, legacies, and the legal foundation of what's real and what isn't. So now you have to ask yourself, where is the line between freedom of speech and deliberate defamation? When someone falsely reframes a case to serve a narrative, who should be held responsible? Kyle Rittenhouse believes the line was crossed. He's not just suing to protect his name. He's sending a message to every future spokesperson who thinks they can stir controversy for attention or strategic gain. And the weight of that message hits hard. Your words have consequences, especially when those words carry influence, shape narratives, and impact how millions of people see the truth. You might not agree with everything Kyle has done. You may have your own feelings about his case. But at some point, you have to admit, if people can distort his truth without consequences, what's to stop them from distorting yours? This lawsuit isn't just personal, it's symbolic. A pushback against a culture that's grown too comfortable bending the truth in public spaces, while hiding from accountability behind microphones and platforms. And maybe that's why it matters more than you first thought. Because if people with influence never face consequences for spreading misinformation, what kind of truth are you left with at all? By now, you've probably noticed a pattern. These stories, Kyle Rittenhouse, Karmelo Anthony, and now the lawsuit in between, they don't just go viral because of what happened. They go viral because the media knows exactly how to keep you watching. They lean into outrage. They blur the lines between fact and emotion. They know that the more confused you are, the more you scroll, the more you share, the more you argue. And you've seen it happen. Probably even participated without realizing it. You click one clip, you read one thread. Suddenly, you've picked a side before even seeing the full picture. That's what makes this moment so important. Because Kyle Rittenhouse's lawsuit isn't just about defending his name. It's about calling out an entire system that rewards distortion more than it does truth. You have to ask yourself, how much of what you believe is based on what you've actually seen versus what you've been told to feel? Karmelo Anthony's camp understood something powerful. That invoking a name like Kyle's could shift the emotional tone, could make people second-guess the facts, could cloud a tragic moment with just enough what-if to buy time, sympathy, or distraction. But at what cost? You start to realize that when people weaponize high-profile cases to sway public opinion, they're not just rewriting someone else's story, they're rewriting your memory of what actually happened. And if no one challenges that, not in court, not in media, not in conversation, then over time, truth becomes optional. And perception becomes everything. So when Kyle fights back, you're forced to look at the bigger question. How many of your opinions were handed to you, carefully packaged, emotionally charged, before you ever got the full story? Now you're left with a moment of stillness. The headlines have been read, the lawsuits filed, the stories told and retold, each with their own spin. But beneath all the noise, you're left alone with one thing, your own conscience. Because this isn't just about Kyle Rittenhouse suing a spokesman. It's not just about Karmelo Anthony, or the stabbing, or the self-defense debate. It's about how truth is treated when it becomes inconvenient. About what happens when people stop caring about facts and start chasing feelings instead. You've seen how quickly narratives form, how easily names can be used, misused, and recycled into someone else's defense. You've seen how supporters